Hi everyone. So we've now hit session 10 of Ecclesiastes, and congratulations for making it this far, because it's been a mission. I want to read from chapter 11 verse 7 to the start of chapter 12 and make some comments on this passage. It just goes like this: light is sweet, and it is pleasant for the eyes to see the sun. Even those who live many years should rejoice in them all, yet let them remember that the days of darkness will be many. All that comes is vanity. Rejoice, young man, while you are young, and let your heart cheer you in the days of your youth. Follow the inclination of your heart and the desire of your eyes. But know that for all these things God will bring you into judgment. Banish anxiety from your mind and put away pain from your body, for youth and the dawn of life are vanity. Remember your Creator in the days of your youth, before the days of trouble come and the years draw near, when you will say, I have no pleasure in them. Well, spring is well and truly over here in New Zealand, and we now kind of entering winter. I think we can officially say autumn is done with. Leaves are everywhere on the ground. But over the summer we had plums, we had figs, we had apples. But the plums and figs were interesting because our fig tree had never kind of delivered, and it did this year. And so we had a few interesting dishes with those. But they just don't last very long. Nor do plums. Like, you had this abundant supply of plums and then it's gone. The peak is so short. You have abundance and then you have nothing. And I guess what we have here is an acknowledgement that youth is brief. It's very brief. And then the light is short, and then the darkness sets in. And so this is kind of, I guess the governing metaphor in this passage, that youth is about the light that is sweet, and then the darkness comes, and that's the difficulty of the later years in life. This was highlighted to me yesterday. We had our grandson Jake stay. He's 2 years old. He's a little live wire. He's a joy to us. His big brown eyes and looking at you can melt you. And so, but I took him in to see my mother, who's over 90, and she's had a recent leg break, and so she can't walk anymore. And so she's very clear that she's ready to go. She tells me every time I visit. And so I have Jake running up and down the halls of this space and looking under beds and experiencing the wildness of life, and mum watching, immobile, finding great joy in her great-grandson being with her, but unable to participate really in any way other than share her licorice all sorts, which he discovered very quickly. And that's the contradiction of the light and the dark. In old age, everything grows dim, difficult. And when you're little, everything sparkles. So this passage is the close off, and it's a brilliant close off, but it challenges us, because most of us want to screen out the reality that life fades. It's a very hard reality. So even when we're 60 years old, we say we're middle-aged, whereas we're actually 2/3 through. We lie to ourselves very easily that it's we're in our prime when we've been in decline for 20 odd years. The culture that we live in is a culture that worships youthfulness, the fitness craze, that, the passionate way people try and stay fit, controlled diet, is because they want to stay young. They want to feel young. They do not want physical decline to mark their days. And the cosmetic surgery that is increasingly common is trying to do anything to Botox this or lipo suck that, so that I look and can maintain some semblance of youthfulness and therefore attractiveness and therefore worth. And this passage would challenge that quite brutally. But first of all, it tries to value that youth is actually a great thing. And by saying this is the second time something has been sweet in Ecclesiastes. The first time it was the sleep of the poor who work hard, and so they get a sweet sleep compared to the rich who don't. And now we get the sweetness of light. And I guess when you get up on a beautiful day, and yesterday was like that. It was a beautiful clear blue sky and palmy. Being the most cloudy city in New Zealand, we can't often say that. But yesterday was like that, getting up to a stunning sky. And it's just beautiful. Walking into a sunny day changes how you feel. That's why more and more people want to live in the warm lifestyle cities, because they feel better in them. And I guess that whole sense of sun and morning is being applied to youth here. That to be young is to be at the beginning of the day when the sun is beautiful. It gets hotter later, it's harsher, and then it's darker, and it goes. So, and we're being told to take pleasure in this, and so it goes on to say, rejoice in them, even if you're old. Rejoice in the sun. Rejoice in the good gifts of life. Because the day is going to come when you can't enjoy them. But again, so both the old and the young are told to rejoice. And the core of rejoicing is gratitude. And I think gratitude is this core value. It was interesting, I was listening to the radio the other day, and it was one of these mental health things where it was saying, think of 10 things to be thankful for, and you'll be way healthier if every day you can remember 10 things to give thanks for. And it was this very secular and I guess unconvincing appeal to find things in your life to be thankful for, but you don't have anyone to thank for them. It's just kind of curious to me. Ellen Davis makes a comment in her commentary on Ecclesiastes. She says, the ability to take pleasure in gifts so small that most of the time we scarcely think of them as gifts. If there's a gift, there's a giver. And if there's something to give thanks for, there's someone to thank. And so we're told here to just have a practice of rejoicing in the giver of every good gift, who is, as James says, the Father of lights, and whose there's no shadow of turning, no shadow in God. Isn't that a beautiful picture? So practice the habit of gratitude. Even if you're old, do it. Don't be an ingrate. Be grateful. And if you're young, rejoice. And then it goes on to say something really interesting. It says to the young who are told to rejoice, let your heart cheer you, and follow the inclination of your heart, the desire of your eyes. But know that for these things God will bring you into judgment. So this phrase should be probably translated in verse 9, let your heart give you joy. I don't know that I was very good at that when I was younger. I was really good at being melancholic, and I see that occasionally in my own kids too, and I wish they weren't like me so much. Of this inability to let my heart give me joy. I don't know if I thought it was more spiritual or deeper to be despondent. But what we've been told here is that life's a good gift, and we're meant to experience it and let it give us joy or pleasure. This is, and I'll touch on this later, is this carpe diem, like seize the day. Take a hold of it. Don't think it's spiritual to have no fun. In fact, some of the most boring people know are Christians, and you'd think that the God who created such beauty, such crazy beauty as the world, and such delightful fun as rock and roll or sex, we would be able to find joy in life. But some people manage to intersect despondency really well. And I have to say I was quite guilty of that for quite a while. It says, follow your heart's inclination. Whatever your eyes see, respond to that. This sounds dangerous, doesn't it? You know, follow the inclination of your heart and the desire of your eyes. But we've already been told what that looks like. The desire of our eyes is not wandering desire. Chapter 6, verse 9 said, I'll read it out again because it's probably become my favourite verse. It says, better is the sight of the eyes than the wandering of desire. So he's not suggesting that to the young person that they go wherever their desires take them. What he's saying is, follow your heart's inclination, and whatever your heart see, put your heart towards it. It's quite similar to God's counsel to Moses. Moses, what do I do? He says, what is in your hand? And he had a staff in his hand, and he threw it down, it became a snake. There was something that he saw, and God worked with that. Often we try to exchange our life and not embrace the things that our eyes see. We want to go somewhere else. We want to do something else. We should have trained in something else. And we always want to be somewhere else. I actually saw Jerry Seinfeld doing a comedy routine around this. And the whole thing of, even when we've got a day off, right, we've got a day off and not at work, we'll have to go somewhere else so that we'll benefit. And we're forever unhappy about where we are. And the Ecclesiastes here is trying to say to us to trust what your eyes see and enjoy them, and don't be trying to follow your wandering desire, but what your heart desires, what your eyes see, fully embrace and enjoy that. But then there's a caveat, and the caveat is this: but for all these things, God will bring you into judgment. Now, this is the clearest that Ecclesiastes has to an eschatology. Like he doesn't talk about the afterlife really at all. His thinking is very much focused on what is the good life on earth, which is what the wisdom literature does. Okay, it's concerned about what is the right way to live, not what is the right way to get eternal salvation. That's not their interest. And so, but he says, but you know, go with what your heart's inclined to do. Trust your heart. Your heart is actually 90% of the time pretty good, unless you've given it over to darkness. Okay, so trust that, but know that God will judge you. The universe is a moral one in the eyes of the teacher of Ecclesiastes. It's a moral universe. We won't get away with the crappy life. It will, in this life, it may catch us up, not necessarily, but God will judge us, he's saying. So therefore, he says, banish anxiety from your mind, put away pain from your body. And that's an interesting one. He's saying, this is not about anxiety. The better translation is banish frustration. Don't get frustrated with your life. If you don't like your life, what do your eyes see? What is your heart inclined to? Why wouldn't you do that? Why would you get frustrated? I meet so many people who are frustrated, probably primarily with themselves and the decisions they've made. And we're being told here, don't get frustrated. Look, see what's in front of you and respond to that. Then it says, cast off your troubles. It's not so much put away the pain from your body, cast away the troubles from your body. I don't carry a dead weight of trouble. Let it go. Don't waste these young years on getting old too early. It's really sad to see old people in young bodies, and you quite often do. It's just like, couldn't you enjoy this? You know, because you're going to be old soon. Why are you old before your time? So the conclusion in terms of advice to young people, which I think this book is all about, is remember the Creator in the days of your youth before the days of trouble come, the days of darkness. So remember. So first we've been told to rejoice, and now we're told to remember. And both these phrases are used of the old and the young. And remember God. Don't forget God in your youth. So many people think, oh, I'll catch up with God later. I'm just going to go wild and have fun. But actually, doesn't tend to happen. We tend to get lost. And one day we realize it's dark and we can't see any light to put our hope in because we embrace dark early. So living knowing that God is real, that God is our creator, not just God, but he's our creator. And he's worth remembering because he formed and shaped us in the womb. He knows us. He hardwired us for glory, to be for life. And why wouldn't we want to remember him in the days of our youth? Derek Kidner makes the comment in his commentary, our tendency is to idolize the state of youth and to dread the loss of it as disastrous. And I've already made mention to that being dominant in our culture now, that we desperately try to hold on to youth. And it's a very ugly, cosmetic, over-made up, over-pampered attempt at youth. And we fear the loss of it and that our life is wasted if we lose our beauty or our physicality or whatever. And we can't. It's impossible to hold on to it. I suspect in our attempts to look externally young, we're getting older inside even faster as we desperately try to hold on to pretend youth. So I want to move on now and to the next stage, and the rest of the book kind of is a reflection on what it's like to get old. And Karen and I have been having a debate. She's called in some support for her view. And it's our toaster's died. And so do we get a 4-piece of toaster or a 2-piece? Now, I've said, look, this is us now. Our last child left today, finally abandoning us. And so we only need a 2 toaster. But she's saying, but the kids come back and we'll need, we'll need a 4 toaster because of all those times when the family's gathered in. But I'm in a very Ecclesiastes moment at the moment, thinking, that doesn't happen very often. At Christmas maybe they'll all come, but the time will come when our home won't be the hub. I watched how in the last 15 years of Mum's life at home, they no longer had the family. They just mentally couldn't do it, and so pretty much we usually gathered at our house, and so. What's the point of getting a toaster for these years that's got 4 when we only need 2? This is me being pathetic, okay? And but that's what this is reflecting on, that our lives just slowly diminish as we age. And so we're told, the time will come when we say we have no pleasure in them, when there is no joy in our years. And the language is fascinating. As you read it, you feel like it's describing the demise of a world, an empire almost. That it's almost apocalyptic language, but I'll apply it to the individual decline. But it could be it's our world is going down, because it feels much bigger than just a personal demise. And I think for all of us who go through the tragedy of a reducing life and watching Mum as she struggles with the death of my father and how her life is gone, it is apocalyptic how she feels. She does feel that her world is being unmade. And that's what Proven argues about this passage. This is the opposite to creation. The sun and the light and the moon and the stars are darkened and clouds return. In Ezekiel, chapter 32, this same description is used of Egypt, of the unmaking of Egypt, where God is judging it and it's being dismembered, so to speak. And here we're talking about the dissembling of a world where the sun, the moon are being darkened, the clouds come with rain. And at the start of our lives, a life is being created, and now it's being uncreated. And the decline of our years is like that. At some point you peak. And I like to think I'm at the top of my powers, kind of growing as a teacher, growing as a leader or whatever. But I notice how people hang on too long, and that their powers significantly decline. And I suspect mine will from this time on. I like to think I'm peak. I'm probably declining already, and I just don't even know it, you know. But that's all right. That's all right. I have a happy daydream going on. But it's just like decline is imminent, if not early onset, and I am being unmade. My energy levels are reducing. But here it creates this really interesting picture of what it is to decline. And in verse 3 it says, in the day when the guards of the house tremble and the strong men are bent, the women who grind cease working because they are few, and those who look through the windows see dimly. What we're being told here is that our sight is being reduced. So our ability to actually see is declining. Our lives narrow because we just can't see. Now, part of that is bad eyesight. But what it's actually saying is that we prefer to be inside. We don't want to go out. Okay, so the guards of the house tremble. Strong men are bent. That literally means are crooked. So the powerful become crooked or bent over. So you might have been powerful, but now you are stooping. You are bent over, and the grinding ceases, and you look out the windows dimly, and you're just seeing the world through your window. This is a sad picture of the decline of a life, where once they were vital and they were out there, and now our life is narrowing to even a room. And that will be one day all of us, whether it be a hospital room or a hospice room or the room of rest home or a bedroom. The second reduction is of sound. In verse 4, where the doors on the street are shut and the sound of grinding is low, and the one rises up at the sound of a bird, and all the daughters of song are brought low. This is quite complicated. One of my favourite albums is an album by an obscure band called the Subdudes, and they wrote an album called Street Symphony after they're based in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina came through, and it's the title track is this reflection of the streets being silent. The children no longer playing outside because everybody just disappeared, and even the dogs were no longer barking, and there's just this horrific silence just due to the flooding because everyone's been moved and relocated. And the Street Symphony celebrates the return of noise, the return of sound, and it's just a sequence of stories about the noises he hears as he's in the street. And it's a street symphony. I love it as a song, you know, and I guess in lockdown we've had silent streets too, you know, where the sound of laughter and the sound of just walking and people being together has been lost, and we felt that silence. And here it's talking about old age as experiencing a loss of sound, that indoors, the doors are shut, and the sound of grinding, the sound of work is gone, i.e. we're no longer productive. And even the sound of birds has gone. That phrase literally means, I used to rise in the morning to the sound of birds, but now the singers, the daughters, are laid low. There is something, we have tuis, each morning we wake to their sound. We've planted native trees here, and the tuis come, and it's just this beautiful sound, and it's saying at night there's no bird sound. The birds are silent. in old age, you no longer hear them, probably because you can't hear them, but also because you don't go out to hear them. The doors are shut. And then verse 5, so we loss of sight, loss of sound, and then loss of stability. Verse 5, when one is afraid of heights and terrors are in the road, the almond tree blossoms, the grasshopper drags itself along, and desire fails, because all must go to their eternal home, and mourners will go about the streets. So we're afraid of heights, afraid of falling, afraid of being knocked over, terrors in the street. You know, we just don't want to go out because it's risky. And I saw that with mum and dad. Their deep preference, we had to buy their groceries while they were living there, and until they, you know, they stayed in their home as long as they could, but they stopped going out about 3 years, for about 3 years, you know, and it's this difficulty of this anxiety of coping with people, of coping with balance, just being able to stand up and be solid on your feet. It goes on to use 3 metaphors, and the first one's tricky, the almond tree blossoms. Then it says desire fails, and that's an interpretation, and then it goes on to say, and the grasshopper drags itself along. So that's the second one. So I'll talk about the grasshopper first because it's easier. The other two are trickier. It says, so the locust or the grasshopper, if in New Zealand we think of grasshopper, we think, oh, that's a nice cute little thing, but think of this world of the locust, and the locusts come in and just strip the crops. And it's talking about the locust dragging itself along, and the implication is that it's so darn full, it's eaten too much, it's stripped the field and nothing is left. You know, one of the phrases in Joel is, you know, God will restore the years that the locust has eaten. Okay, it's a beautiful picture of God giving grace even into our later years. But this is the opposite picture. What it's saying is, you know, in old age, the locusts come in and basically strip our lives and strips the land. And even remembering yesterday is hard. So much disappears. And so the locust drags itself along because it's just taken our life from us. The second thing is, it says desire fails. Now, that's a little translation or an attempt to interpret a difficult phrase. It literally, the Hebrew is the caper tree breaks or fails. The caper tree, I don't know if you do Italian cooking, but capers are kind of a bit of a staple in Mediterranean food, the caper berry. And it was thought to help your appetite, so it added to your appetite, but it's a little bit naughty as well. It was meant to be an aphrodisiac, so you'd take it to get your mojo back. And basically it's saying, well, the caper tree fails, and so it's translated desire, but pleasure, the ability to eat and the ability to get yourself going sexually goes. So the caper tree fails you. Cute picture. And then the first images of the almond tree blossoming. And one theory around this is that the almond tree blossoming was like light, and the tree was dark and it went light, so they're kind of going grey. I think that translation is less likely. In his commentary, Ian Provan makes the suggestion that what we're seeing in this passage is that the almond tree blossoms, but then the locust comes. So it had the promise of blossom, but it doesn't crop. So the almond tree blossoms, but then the locust strips it. And so it promised fruit, but it spurned us. So that word blossoms could also mean spurns or despises in the Hebrew. So there's this hint that, you know, the almond tree promised something and didn't deliver. The locust took it, and then the caper tree failed too. it's a very poetic description of the loss of life, and at the end of it says, and all must go to their eternal home, i.e. We got stripped bare. We'd go, and the mourners go about the streets. Now, then verse 6 and 7 has always fascinated me, and I never got it. And I just want to warn you, the Hebrew is complicated, and I'm relying on in Proven here, but I just think what he does with this passage is amazing. So I'll just read it out. It says, before the silver cord is snapped, and the golden bowl is broken, and the pitcher is broken at the fountain, and the wheel broken at the cistern, and the dust returns to the earth as it was, and breath returns to God who gave it. Vanity, vanity of vanities, says the teacher. All is vanity. So Proven argues, and I agree with him, that this is about burial. So it's been looking at the way our lives are stripped, and then it talks about the mourners in the streets, and now this is our burial. The silver cord snaps, and the golden bowl is broken. The silver and gold are very precious items, and what it's saying is the preciousness of a life breaks. It just takes the snapping of the cord, gone. And so even though it's precious, it goes. The other image that's being used here is one like the bowl. It's a golden bowl, and then it says a pitcher or a, and both of these items carry liquid. They contain liquid or life, and then they crack and break, and the liquid is poured out. Everything that's precious is lost. And so this again is the image of life passing to God, disappearing from the frame, the mortal coil lets it go. We shed the mortal coil. So the bowl and pitcher talk about that life liquid, if you will, being lost. But there's a repeated phrasing that goes on, and in the Hebrew, these words are repeated. So the word for bowl and wheel are exactly the same. It's the word goal, okay, and both of them are crushed or broken. So the golden bowl is broken, and the wheel is broken at the cistern. Now, that word is literally crushed in the Hebrew. Now, the bowl and the wheel are derived from this word gull, and this word gull can also be translated skull or head. Okay, so it's just doing your head in. Okay, what it means is that the word for bowl or wheel or skull it come from the same root word in the Hebrew. And so when we've been told that the bowl is broken and the wheel is broken, there is a bit of a rhyme going on that is saying skull is broken or crushed. Now, if you know your Bible, Genesis 3:15 talks about, it's the first prophecy in the Bible talking about the serpent, that you will bruise his heel, but the coming Messiah will crush your head. And the crushing of the head is about death, and that the Messiah will crush, the chosen child of God will crush the serpent's head. Here the same phrases being played out very subtly. The bowl, the wheel, it's got this same core root meaning as skull is going to be crushed out. That's us. And that phrase, the wheel broken at the cistern, that wheel probably should, the word for cistern probably should be well or pit. So the wheel is talking about the pitcher going into the well, and the wheel winding it up, I guess, and here we're being told that the wheel is broken at the pit. So the head is crushed and it's going into this pit or the grave. It's an incredibly poetic replaying, I think, of Genesis 3:15. But I don't know how much support I have on that, but that's my wondering. Then it goes on to say, and if we think about how Ecclesiastes 1 started, it began with this endless circle of life. The sun goes up, the sun goes down. The water comes from the sky and it goes to the sea. There's this endless cycle of liquid, of light, and of coming up and coming down. And what we're being told here is that we will no longer be a part of that cycle of life. When we die, we go to the pit, to the grave, and that is it. No second chance. While creation might have this rhythm of life of sun up, sun down, for us it is sun down. We have entered the pit. And so there is the cry, breath returns to God who gave it. Vanity, vanity, all is vanity, or fleeting, brief, all is so brief, the briefest of breaths. So this ends in this dark thing. We're told to remember our Creator when we're young, because the dark is going to come, when our lives just shrivel and our breath goes to God, our liquid is poured out, and we enter the grave. We are no more. So what is the good news, you say, after that? Well, the good news is the Ecclesiastes ends with the editor saying just what a great guy the writer of Ecclesiastes was. The teacher sought to find pleasing words and words of truth. So he wrote words of pleasure or life, and he wrote words of truth. And those two things are the other tension of Ecclesiastes. You'll notice all the way through in Ecclesiastes, he is saying, you're going to give an account. You have a judge. You have eternity plumbed in you. And you are accountable for what you do. And you can put your hand to anything. Your eyes can see stuff, and you can achieve, and you can pursue folly. You can do all those things, but you are going to give an account. But you got to find a way to have joy in life. And you are meant to pursue joy and to put your hand fully to things rather than live anxiously and out of frustration. So there's these tensions. And so he speaks words of pleasure or life and inviting us to live life fully. But he has also words of truth, that we're to be sober about our lives. And so the person honors the teacher as saying he was like that, and he arranged these words for us. And that word for arrange means straightened. He straightened these words. Now all the way through he's talked crooked, and now these words though are straight. They're goads. And so that word for goads, we're told in verse 11, the words, sayings of the wise are goads, like nails firmly fixed, and are the collected sayings. So what it's saying there is that a goad was like a kind of someone keeping cattle or sheep or whatever would have a goad, and it's this staff, and they'd bang nails into the end of the staff. And if they were channeling their sheep down a narrow road or whatever, they'd be flicking the animals with this staff that's got nails sticking out of the end of it to keep them where they ought to be, in the straight and narrow. And what we're being told here is that the teacher is a goad. His words are goads to us to stay in the straight and narrow, but there is room to move. There's a lot of room to move. I just want to end off by reflecting on the Dead Poets Society. You might remember the great Robin Williams, who acted in there as a teacher who comes to a school of young men who basically are under the thumb. And he begins to tell them, carpe diem, seize the day. This becomes, I only discovered that phrase watching that program and that movie. And he basically encourages them to pursue their lives and not to just die and be just another memory on a photograph. And he basically destroys this narrative that it's worth being great at sport, great at whatever, and getting their photo on the wall. He says, seize the day. And they begin to drink and do stuff. And one of them commits suicide. And their seizing of the day ends up in quite tragic circumstances. I want to suggest that the writer of Ecclesiastes is saying, seize the day. And this is the one side of his narrative, that we are meant to experience life and the joys of it, the meal table, of finding joy in our work and making a difference. But on the other hand, we are to remember that God is our creator. And we're to hold these two things in tension. We are meant to seize our lives and find joy in them and not be a boring prat. But also remember our creator. We are to fear God and to honor God and revere God in our lives. And this is the tension. And there's a lot of room to move. Now, if you purely remember God and fear God, you could become a Pharisee. And many Christians do. They become moralists who are always judging people on the basis of whether they're right enough, their doctrine is pure enough, whether they measure up in whatever way. God deliver us all from being more like the Pharisees than Jesus. On the other hand, you could purely pursue carpe diem, seize the day, whatever you see, give yourself to it and find pleasure. And we could become idolaters. We could just worship the creation rather than the creator if we pursue that alone. We've got this challenge of how do we remember God and live life fully? How do we navigate that? Therein lies the challenge, but the writer of Ecclesiastes has offered us counsel for that we are called to remember the eternity wired within us and to experience the seasons, not fight them. There's a whole lot of counsel here. But what I want to suggest is there is a lot of room to move for us. I regret that I was too pharisaical. I was too playing the judge, evaluating and not living well enough. And some of you will feel that. Some of you will be listen to this and realize actually you're really good at forgetting God and ignoring that you will actually give an account, that you will actually, one day your breath will go and you're behaving yourself into a dark place. And let's live between these kind of like safety flags on the beach, so to speak. Let's live within these. There's a lot of room to play. Christianity is not a morality. It's a life lived honoring God. And there is really a lot of room to play and to find joy. And the writer of Ecclesiastes, I think, is trying to warn us in the pitfalls of a life forgetting God, which is tragic, or a life that actually does not value the joys that God has put in this world, the good gifts that we can experience every day. So let's do both those things. So may God bless you as you stay within the flags and not go into the craziness of hedonism or into the dark kind of black and whiteness of fundamentalism where you can't find joy in this world because you're too concerned with being right. May you avoid those extremes and enjoy God, enjoy your life, find joy in it, and banish frustration and anxiety. May God bless you. Amen.